Ever stop and think about how your body really moves, how it heals, how it, performs at its absolute peak?
Hmm.
For so long, the way we've looked at it is a bit, well, fragmented, like seeing engine parts, but maybe missing how the whole car works together.
Right, the interconnectedness.
Exactly. And what if there's a huge piece of that puzzle we've mostly overlooked? What if we need a totally new way of seeing health, movement, maybe even performance?
Well, that's a big question.
It is, and that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at Terence Hughes's really groundbreaking scientific framework. It's all laid out in his new book, The Invisible Injury. Is it time for a new vision for health, movement, and performance?
Yeah, and it really is a significant shift in perspective.
It's not just like another rehab technique or workout fad, is it? It feels deeper. It's about rethinking the fundamentals of how we're built and how we operate.
Absolutely. It moves way beyond just looking at muscles and bones in isolation. Hughes offers this really holistic, integrated view of how the body actually functions as a complete system.
A system.
And right at the core of it is something he calls the quartet of movement.
The quartet of movement. Okay, so our mission for this deep dive, we're going to unpack each part of that quartet.
Tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, and synthesis.
Right, and then we'll see how they all weave together, how they build towards this ultimate state Hughes calls transmission.
Yeah.
Basically, consider this your shortcut to understanding a pretty advanced but really integrated way of looking at human potential, straight from the source material.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's get into it. Where do we start? Maybe with the absolute foundation, how we physically connect with the world.
That makes sense.
Because the old model, the one most of us probably learned, was kind of like, well, a stack of blocks, right? Bones on bones, muscles pulling levers.
Pretty much, yeah. A very mechanical view.
But Hughes's framework, it seems to just turn that completely upside down.
It really does. He starts with tensegrity. That's the foundation. Forget the blocks. Imagine your body more like a dynamic network held together by continuous tension.
Continuous tension, the web.
Exactly, a web. So in this view, your bones aren't like solid pillars holding everything up. They're more like compression struts. They kind of float within this sea of tension.
Floating bones.
And that tension. It's created by this intricate, nonstop web of fascia, muscles, ligament. It's all connected. People like Stephen Levin, Thomas Myers, they did amazing work mapping this out. Those anatomy trains.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
They show how force travels along these myofascial lines, right across the body, not just within one muscle doing its job. It's a global system.
Okay, so it's not just theory then. Is there science backing this up?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's so compelling. Recent studies using MRI, ultrasound, they can actually see force being transmitted along these fascial planes. It's not just muscle tendon units doing all the work.
So fascia is way more important than we thought.
Massively important. It means a little tug or tightness in one spot can literally ripple through your whole structure.
Yeah.
And critically, think about elastic energy, like a spring or a rubber band.
For jumping, running.
Exactly. Powerful, efficient movement. That ability to store and release energy, it relies entirely on the health and integrity of this whole tensional network.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is forget just training isolated muscles if you want real power and efficiency. You need to think about this whole tension network, right? Like loading up a spring.
You've got it. Training the system, not just the parts.
But you mentioned fascia, and this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. What about the brain, the neurology behind this? It can't just be physics.
No, it's deeply neurological. And this is maybe the most profound part. That fascial network, it's incredibly, almost unbelievably rich in proprioceptors.
The body's position sensor.
Exactly. And get this, the fascia has something like 6 to 10 times more of these sensory nerve endings than muscle tissue does.
Wow, 6 to 10 times.
Yeah, it creates this incredibly dense, constant stream of information flowing back to your central nervous system. Your brain knows what's happening in this tension network in minute detail.
So the brain is constantly monitoring this tension.
Constantly. It's adjusting what Hughes calls pre-tension calibration. Basically, tuning the background tension across the whole system so you're ready to move, optimally responsive. There are even specialized receptors that specifically monitor the tensional integrity across different layers of tissue.
So tiny adjustments can have big effects because the brain is listening so closely to this network.
Precisely. A local change sends signals that can lead to global adjustments.
And this isn't just abstract stuff. You mentioned the Samba Protocol applies this. How does that work in practice?
Right, so the Samba Protocol, which is based on these ideas, uses specific movements, things like spiral loading patterns.
Spirals, like throwing or kicking?
Kind of, yeah. They engage those natural diagonal and spiral fascial lines, helping you transmit force more effectively, say, from your foot up to your opposite hand. Then there are elastic loading cycles movements designed specifically to tap into that springy recoil quality of the fascia.
Making you more bouncy, more efficient.
Exactly. More pop, less effort. And it emphasizes global-local integration, building awareness of how a small movement here can influence something way over there because of these fascial connections.
Okay, that tensegrity structure makes a lot of sense. It's dynamic, interconnected. But how does the brain manage all that information? How does it organize everything to produce intelligent movement? It seems incredibly complex.
It does seem complex, but that brings us to the second element of the quartet, simplexity.
Simplexity.
Yeah.
Simple and complex.
Exactly. It's this fascinating idea that you don't necessarily need complex instructions to get complex, adaptable behavior. Simple rules can generate incredibly sophisticated outcomes. Think about a flock of birds turning on a dime.
Yeah, amazing coordination.
But there's no leader shouting orders, right? Each bird is just following a few simple rules relative to its neighbors. Our bodies do something similar. Research, like from Beasy and Musa Avaldi, shows we have these motor primitives in the spinal cord.
Motor primitive,
Wow.
like building blocks.
Kind of, yeah. Pre-programmed basic movement modules. Your brain doesn't have to invent movement from scratch every time. It can just combine and sequence these simple primitives to create almost any action. Complex patterns emerge from simple constraints. It's much more efficient computationally.
So the brain isn't micromanaging every single muscle fiber.
Definitely not. It leverages simplexity. Think about predictive coding. Your motor cortex predicts the outcome of a movement and then only steps in to adjust if there's an error between the prediction and the reality. Much less processing needed.
Okay.
Then you have chunking, especially in the basal ganglia. The brain groups sequences of movement into functional units, like shifting gears in a car becomes one smooth action, not lots of little steps. It reduces the mental load.
Right.
And attractor dynamics. Neural networks tend to settle into stable, efficient patterns based on the task and the environment. The system finds the simplest, most stable solution rather than calculating everything.
So it's about finding elegant solutions rather than brute force calculation. How does the Samba Protocol use this?
Well, it encourages constraint-based learning. Instead of just telling you exactly how to move, it sets up environments or tasks with certain rules or constraints and lets your body figure out the solution. Movement emerges.
Learning by doing, by exploring.
Exactly. It uses movement puzzles problems that you can't just think your way through logically. You have to feel it, understand the patterns intuitively, and template-based training. Developing core movement templates like a squat or a hinge that are robust but also highly adaptable to different situations. Build complexity from elegant simplicity.
Okay, so we have the tensegrity structure and simplexity organizing the control. But movement isn't just individual parts doing their thing, even if organized simply. It's about coordination, right? Everything working together smoothly.
Absolutely. And that leads us perfectly in the third element, synergy.
Synergy, working together.
Precisely. It's how the nervous system is smart enough to not control every single joint angle or muscle activation individually. That would be incredibly complex. Instead, it groups elements into functional unit synergies that work together.
Like an orchestra section playing together.
That's a great analogy. The conductor guides the sections, not every single note of every instrument. Research by Latache and others, like the uncontrolled manifold hypothesis, supports this. The nervous system stabilizes the important stuff, the goal of the movement, while allowing variability in the individual components, as long as they work together synergistically.
So it allows for flexibility while still achieving the goal.
Exactly. We see muscle synergies, consistent patterns of muscle co-activation for certain tasks, and joint synergies joins, moving in coordinated ways to simplify control. It makes complex actions fluid and manageable for the brain.
What's happening in the brain to create these synergies?
Several cool mechanisms. There's cortical binding, where areas like the supplementary motor area, the SMA, seem to integrate distributed motor commands into a unified action plan.
Bringing it all together.
Yeah. Then there's the cerebellum, crucial for cerebellar timing. It ensures all the elements within a synergy fire in the right sequence, with precise timing, like the rhythm section of the orchestra. And even things like cross-frequency coupling, where different brainwave patterns synchronize across brain areas to coordinate activity over different timescales, allowing for smooth, continuous movement.
Wow, it really is like an internal symphony. How does the Samba protocol help develop these synergies?
It uses specific strategies, for example, cross-pattern training, movements that deliberately involve coordinating opposite limbs or crossing the body's midline. This strengthens the neural links between brain hemispheres.
Like coordinating arms and legs.
Exactly. It also heavily uses rhythm-based synchronization. Training with music or a metronome isn't just for fun. It actually entrains neural rhythms, enhancing timing and coordination, helps the whole system move as one cohesive unit.
Using rhythm to sync everything up.
Right. And it employs progressive binding, starting with simple movements and gradually combining them into more complex synergistic sequences, building coordination layer by layer. You can really see how tensegrity, simplicity, and synergy start to build on each other here.
Yeah, it's starting to form a picture. Structure, organization, coordination. But what about, true mastery, that effortless, fluid, almost genius level movement you see in experts? Where does that come from?
That brings us to the pinnacle, the fourth element of the quartet, synthesis.
Synthesis, bringing it all together at a higher level.
Exactly. It represents the highest order of integration. It's not just about the individual systems working well. It's about how they merge and interact to create something greater than the sum of the parts. True movement intelligence.
And neuroscience can shed light on this too.
Increasingly so. We're seeing things like network integration theory. It suggests expertise isn't just about specific brain areas getting better, but about increased communication and integration between different brain networks: motor, sensory, cognitive, attentional.
So the whole brain works together more effectively.
Precisely. Studies on motor-cognitive coupling show that advanced physical skill is tightly linked with better integration between motor control systems and higher-level cognitive processes. It's thinking and doing becoming one.
That makes sense.
And we see multi-level processing. In experts, they seem to process information simultaneously across all levels of the nervous system, from spinal reflexes right up to complex planning in the cortex, all seamlessly integrated.
How does the brain achieve that level of integration?
It's fascinating. Experts sometimes show integration of the default mode network, typically active during rest or mind wandering, with the networks active during the task. This might relate to that effortless, intuitive flow state.
Interesting. Almost like relaxed concentration.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
We also see evidence for enhanced corpus callosum development with high-level movement training. That's the main bridge between your brain hemispheres, better communication between the left and right brain, and vertical integration, smoother, faster communication pathways connecting the cortex, subcortical structures like the basal ganglia and cerebellum, and the spinal cord. A truly unified command structure.
It sounds almost like developing a movement superpower. How does the Samba protocol encourage this kind of synthesis?
It uses specific approaches. Attentional flexibility training, for example. Exercises that require you to shift focus rapidly between narrow and broad awareness, or internal and external cues. That builds cognitive flexibility alongside movement skill.
Training the mind and body together.
Absolutely. Also, perceptual integration challenges. Tasks that force you to integrate information from multiple senses: vision, touch, hearing, proprioception, simultaneously to guide movement. Makes that sensory motor loop incredibly sophisticated.
Okay.
And embracing cross-disciplinary movement. Drawing principles from dance, martial arts, athletics, different movement forms. This broadens your movement vocabulary and forces your brain to synthesize across different contexts, leading to deeper, more adaptable understanding.
It really sounds like it broadens the whole mind-body connection.
That's the goal, cultivating that integrated wisdom of movement.
So we've unpacked tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, and synthesis, this whole quartet.
Yeah.
What does it all lead to? How does it result in what Hughes calls transmission?
Right. Transmission is the ultimate outcome. It's the state where all four elements of the quartet are operating in perfect, seamless harmony. It's effortless, adaptable, efficient, intelligent movement.
The culmination.
Exactly. You can think of it as a pathway. Tensegrity provides the resilient, responsive structure. Simplexity gives you the efficient organizational logic. Synergy delivers the smooth, coordinated action. And synthesis provides the integrated intelligence and adaptability. When all four are highly developed and integrated, that's transmission.
And this isn't just a feeling, right? You said we can see signs of this.
We can. Modern neuroimaging gives us a glimpse at the neurological signature of transmission. For instance, experts often show less activity in their prefrontal cortex during skilled performance.
Less activity. That seems counterintuitive.
It indicates automaticity. They aren't consciously thinking through every step. The skill is so deeply ingrained, it runs efficiently on lower-level circuits. It's become automatic.
Ah, okay. Effortless execution.
Exactly. We also see things like increased white matter connectivity, think better, faster communication highways between brain areas involved in planning and executing movement, and greater phase synchronization, meaning different brain regions are firing together in perfect rhythm during performance. Incredible neural coherence.
And presumably this translates into things we can actually see and measure.
Absolutely. There are clear, measurable outcomes of transmission. Obvious ones like enhanced adaptability, performing well even when conditions change unexpectedly. Greater efficiency, you can measure lower oxygen use, lower heart rate, less perceived effort for the same amount of work,
Right.
but also improved problem solving, the ability to find creative movement solutions on the fly, much better body awareness, that deep sense of knowing where you are and how you're moving. And faster motor learning rates, you pick up new skills and adapt existing ones more quickly.
You can really quantify this higher level of movement intelligence.
You can. And the real magic, perhaps, of something like the Samba Protocol is how it deliberately weaves these elements together to cultivate that neurobiological state.
How does it do that specifically?
Well, take the cross-lateral and spiral pattern foundations we mentioned. Those aren't just random exercises. They directly stimulate the corpus callosum, improving that interhemispheric communication vital for synthesis. They build a rich, 3D proprioceptive map in your brain and train your ability to handle forces from all directions, key for tensegrity.
So the movements themselves build the integration.
Yes. And think about rhythm as neural integration. Using rhythm isn't just about keeping time. It actively enhances cerebellar function, critical for timing, error correction, coordination, driving synergy. It can literally cause neural entrainment, syncing up brain activity, which helps with complexity and adaptation.
Rhythm is training the brain directly.
Profoundly. Then there are the learning principles it applies, drawing from things like Schmidt's schema theory. Using variable practice, constantly changing the movement slightly, forces your brain to abstract the underlying principles of the movement, not just memorize one specific way.
Yeah.
That builds adaptable synthesis.
Learning the concept, not just the movement.
Exactly. And using contextual interference, mixing up different types of movements or challenges within a session, can feel harder initially. But research shows it leads to much better long-term learning and transfer. Again, fostering synthesis.
Okay.
And finally, it embraces ideas from complexity science and ecological dynamics, recognizing that skills emerge from the dynamic interaction between you and your environment, allowing the body's natural intelligence to self-organize solutions rather than imposing rigid techniques. This touches on tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, the whole quartet working together in context.
Letting the body find the best way.
Trusting the system's inherent intelligence, which thrives when you have diversity in your movement background. People who've done different activities often adapt faster. Their system is already wired for synthesis.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've covered. From the body's basic structure with tensegrity through simplexity and synergy, all the way to this high-level integrated intelligence of synthesis. It really makes it clear that transmission, this peak state, isn't some kind of magic or just pure talent. It seems like a logical, almost predictable outcome if you develop and integrate these quartet elements properly.
That's the core idea. It demystifies high performance to some extent. It gives a roadmap.
Yeah.
And if there's one thread pulling it all together, making that final transmission state so fluid and powerful, it's often that element of timing, the precise, almost imperceptible orchestration of all these systems working in perfect temporal harmony.
The rhythm that binds it all.
In a way, yes.
Okay, so here's something for you, our listener, to think about as you go about your day. Consider this. How might applying these principles, really understanding your body's tensegrity, leveraging simplexity, building synergy, aiming for synthesis, how might that not just change how you move physically, but also maybe influence how you learn, how you adapt, how you handle complexity in any part of your life? A new project, learning a skill, even just navigating the everyday. It feels like it's about more than just movement. It's about mastering complexity itself.
Like a powerful lens to look through.
It really is. Well, thank you for taking us through this fascinating deep dive into Terence Hughes's work. It's given me a lot to think about.
My pleasure. It's compelling stuff.
And thank you for joining us on this exploration. Hopefully, it gives you a new vision for your own health, movement, and performance.